when he comes back, and he might kind of continue his intro. But I just want to say, on behalf of City Lights, you know, it's always a thrill and a lot of fun to work with Litquake. And our local Oktoberfest is the closest thing to a literary holiday that we actually have around here. So kudos to Litquake for pulling it off year after year and keeping the literary life alive and kicking in the Bay Area. Speaking of institutions, literary institutions, here at City Lights, we await with great anticipation for what has now become a major literary event for us. And we've traditionally carried a lot of journals, literary anthologies, and what have you at City Lights. But the one we're celebrating today really stands out in a lot of different ways, aesthetically, politically, in its craft, and I think just in terms of the really great storytelling that you find there. And there is so much thoughtfulness and care that kind of goes into each installment. Freeman's has become for us a kind of a looking glass, helping us to kind of stand as witness to our time. So we really also need to pay homage and tribute to the force behind this remarkable collection. John Freeman has been an editor, writer, cultural hero, certainly to us here at City Lights, and I should add, poet, which is significant because it really contributes to his eye for all that goes on in the anthology. And I know he's known more for his editing, being editor at Granta for many years, but it's through his poetry, I think, that one really gets a sense of his thinking. And I encourage you all to actually check out his books. Copper Canyon has published him. He has such great respect for the craft, and this really comes through in bringing together issue after issue some of the most brilliant writers around. And that is one of the outstanding features of Freeman's, the building of community. John does that naturally, intuitively, with great finesse. The writing is inextricably connected to community building. And with that, each journal brings us a little closer to and reminds us of our own humanity at a time when I think we need it most. So it's very significant that the latest issue has love as its theme. I feel that is very apropos. And it is really a great pleasure that we can bring you these amazing writers, Robin Coste Lewis, Matt Summell, and I think, hopefully, Tommy Orange, although you didn't see him in that house earlier. And of course, their great champion and friend, John Freeman. So Jack, are you back? Not yet. Okay, well, so I'm just going to turn it over to John.
Yes, I'm back.
Oh, you're back. Okay.
Hello.
Good.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, fucking Comcast Xfinity. I'd like to give a shout out to them for their piece of crap service. Sorry about all that, folks. Peter, excellent intro. Yeah, you said it all. Let's just do it. Let's hear from everybody. So let's take it away, John.
Thank you so much, Jack. Let me make sure I'm live, aren't I? Thank you so much. It's really nice to be here with some friends and to be back at City Lights and to be here at Litquake, which I've been to so many events that you've held over the years. And I became a human being by going to City Lights, by spending time up in the poetry room. So you'll forgive me if, as we begin this event, which is about love and is basically trying to think about what would happen if we thought about love as the most powerful force in the world. What if it was love that actually changed the world? What if it was love that made the world turn? What if it was love that was the goal of living, of giving and receiving love? What if love was the goal of writing? And the writers that have joined me tonight all do that in the most beautiful ways in 3 different forms. Robin Coste Lewis is the author of poems that feel rolled in the hand for years before they're given to you. She's the winner of the National Book Award for The Voyage of the Sable Venus, which is one of the most exquisite books you will ever read, probably one of the best first books ever written. She's a former poet laureate of Los Angeles, writer in residence at USC, and is a Guggenheim Fellow, and she joins us from a makeshift study in the home of a family member. Robin, it's really nice to see you.
Thank you.
And Matt Summell is a graduate of the University of California, Irvine's MFA program in writing, and his fiction has appeared in the Paris Review, Esquire, and McSweeney's. and Freeman's as well. His short story collection, Making Nice, is currently being adapted for a comedic series at WB-TV. In addition to being a very funny book, it's also one of the most poignant and heartbreaking books about grief. And it shows how love fractures when there's a subtraction. I think Tommy Orange is going to be joining us a few minutes late. So at this point, we're just going to, he stepped on a rattlesnake.
Oh shit.
This is the best offstage message I've ever been given.
What?
All right, so he's on a path, and a rattlesnake is attacking his family, and he's throwing rocks at it. So that's love for you, people. This is the most California beginning ever. All we need is like a fire pit and like a little one hitter that we're passing back and forth to.
That's wild.
But since we're here at City Lights, thank you, Peter, for having us again. And the Poetry Room to me is sort of the ventricles 1, 2, 3, and 4 of my literary heart. I want to ask Robin, in Voyage of the Sable Venus, you have this line, how like love art can be. Mm. And to narrow that a little finer, like, what is it about a poem? No one says, hey, I'm getting married. Can you read a short story at my wedding? No one woos someone else with a novel manuscript, except maybe MFA students. What is it about love and poetry that go together? And
such a good question. Also, no one asks anyone to read a novel at somebody's funeral either, right? No, it's true though, right? Poetry is one of the oldest art forms of our centuries, and I think the reason being is that it's an experience. It's not a story. I mean, it can be narrative based, of course. Many poems are, but more importantly, it could do many things at once. It could be a story, but it also can transport you to a new place. I love, first of all, hi Bay Area and hi City Lights. I miss you all so much. I live there. My son was born there. I've been a Bay Area person, and John Freeman and I are dear friends now. John, I just realized that we were probably in City Lights' Poetry Room at the same time over the years at some point. City Lights, thank you for your incredible legacy and what you offer the world. You are by far a holy pilgrimage for me. So what is a poem? What can a poem do that other art forms can't? I think is what your question is, John, and why do we use it in these moments of intense liminality and transition? I think they're doorways. I think they're boats. I think they're new countries in which we go to live, right? And that the poem is the bridge to those places. I don't know. And also, I wanted to say when you were, your introduction, John, it reminded me that Elizabeth Alexander at Barack Obama's inauguration, which feels so different now, right? Said in her inaugural poem, said exactly that. What if love is the mightiest word? What if it is, right? And I think it's really brave of us and smart, more importantly, to talk about love right now, as opposed to all the other things we've been talking about, because it might be the only thing that can save us.
Mm. In Voyage of the Sable Venus, among other things, the role of desire and race and how they help create the self is investigated. Yeah. And I wonder what your thinking is about love and the self, because reading the poem that is in this issue, it's set in 1960. It's about a couple, and it's about a kind of playful, slightly sexy exchange of affection for electronics. And given the access that you have to the information, unless the poem is entirely fictional, I assume that you knew these people in some ways and the story was told to you.
Yes.
So as we read this poem, we're kind of overlooking it. And I read it thinking, what does it mean to grow up in the shadow of this kind of love? Like, what if this is your inheritance? What if this is what you're taught love can be? In addition to being the thing that holds you and binds you, it's the thing that that can be fun, that can be a joy, that can be a joke, that could be an exchange. And I guess I'm asking you in the most roundabout way, what do you think love played a role in your life, I guess, about the creation of yourself?
I hate John Freeman. He always makes me cry. You make me cry. That's a lot of what you just said was so complicated. And what I love about your work and what I love about your writing and I love about your editorial kind of activism is how astute you are. I just want to say that you're only the second person in my life who's talked about desire in my book. And for me, it is the organizing principle upon which the whole book spins. I think what it's about, I hope, at least what I'm fascinated by, is the ways in which desire, and I mean with the capital D as in desire makes all of, every life cell spin. Without want, the cell does not evolve. Without desire, we don't do anything. I'm really interested in the ways in which desire is ruptured by history, right? The ways in which politics and the state and empire get in the way, get between our mouths when we try to kiss each other. Claudia Rankine, who's a dear friend, and I had a great conversation once, and I was like, yeah, I know I should write about the world more, but I think the true political abyss is in our bed, like when we roll over to a lover and there's a rupture there. That to me is as historical and as political as, any other great political problem in our world. About the poem, it's a story my parents told me. And as I grew older, especially like once I hit my late 30s, I would spend New Year's Eve with them, and I was the only one on the baby. And I guess because I was coming home from out of town, we would sit around the table and drink Manischewitz, and they would tell me their stories, and they would run the gamut. And this poem that I'm going to read is based on a story that they told me, and because I was older, they could disclose their sex life to me. And this poem, this story took place before I was even born, before even my sister was born, just when my two older brothers were around. And I love the story so much because it's exactly what you're saying, John, about how desire and playfulness, it's so political. Play is so political, and love is political and sex is political. And this was a story, when I look at this poem now, I actually wrote this poem many, many years ago. And when I look at it now, I think about it as a great migration artifact, right? And how stories about what people are doing behind closed doors in the middle of, incredible political turmoil, and how they are experiencing joy and pleasure. I talk about this all the time, that Black joy is my aesthetic. It to me, it's like that's the real political kernel that I'm looking for, at least. I could go on and on. You should just shut me up. Yeah.
No, I'm just. Would you read the poem now? Because it's
Oh,
a
sure.
beautiful poem.
Oh, sure. So I realized when I read this poem recently in your honor, John Freeman, and for the new Freeman's issue, I'm so honored to be included in it, that we've gotten old, and a lot of kids, or a lot of people, I won't be ageist, don't know what a hi-fi is. Oh my God. And so I had to stop in the middle of the poem and start over. So I'm going to say now, here are the things you need to know. A hi-fi is a piece of furniture, a console that has a record player in it, and the record player is sublime, and the sound is exquisite, and you have never heard anything like it unless you've heard, the old technology of a 78 or 45 spinner. There are other things in this poem that you need to know. A quad, a klipsch, a H.A. Scott, a claritone, an electro voice, a Macintosh, or a Magnavox are all different stereos, different companies that created brilliant technology to make the sound so smooth. So that's what you need to know. I think that's it. Yeah, let me just make sure. We're getting older, John. I have to like make sure I translate the historical. This, when I wrote this poem, it wasn't history, and now it's history. Isn't that funny? Okay, so and hi-fi is short for high fidelity, and so this is called high fidelity because it's also a play on fidelity and intimacy, and commitment and love. High fidelity, Los Angeles, 1960. For a hi-fi, a pine console of photographic veneer inlaid with glittering plastic. That was the deal. When he got home, she had whined like a girl, always his signal. I'm waiting for a minute. It says my internet was unstable. Always his signal, or was it hers, that she would be generous if he gave in to the new electronic appliance she wanted. That's how stovetop toast became a toaster, how the icebox became a Frigidaire. As she goes to work on top of him, she's not thinking. Her body is a quad, a klipsch, or the H.H. Scott. She's a claritone with a built-in electro voice speaker, and each button and knob, when tuned or pushed, adjust her sounds automatically. In the time it takes to exhaust him, she's narrowed it down. Either she wants the new Macintosh or a Magnavox because there's one down at the Goodwill, slightly used. It has a record changer that can play their 78s, but still spin the new little 45s. She is sweating in her new slip, the one she got on her new peach-colored credit card downtown at the Sears and Roebucks. He's wearing his undershirt, one of many she pressed over the weekend with starch whisked quick from flour and water. He's done. She's proud. The boys sleep on the sofa bed in the living room. He lights 2 Pall Malls, passes her the most lit. She takes a hit. I know which one I want, she says. He nuzzles his nose into her armpit. Which one what, he would ask, and rolls over, chuckling. My parents, when they told me the story, were laughing hysterically about basically how my father fooled my mother into giving him pleasure if he agreed to buy her a hi-fi. And I just love that story about how desire and intimacy can become such a familiar and safe terrain.
Yeah, I love it. And the poem that was in a recent issue as well was about you sneaking into a drive-in cinema with your family, like crawling into the trunk of a car. And it occurs to me that as we age, the language of love ages with us. And it becomes a sort of secret language when it used to be a kind of specific language.
Yes, yes. I was thinking when you were saying, what did it feel like to grow up in with a certain kind of love around you? You know, my parents couldn't stand each other sometimes. They really fought hard. It was really a glorious thing to see most of the time. You know, they had when I would ask my father, why would they never get a divorce? They were married 53 years until my dad died. And they barely knew each other when they got married. And when I asked them why you wouldn't get a divorce throughout my childhood and, you know, adulthood, he would say, because we're Catholic, we don't do divorce. And you said, what did it mean to grow up in that kind of love? I realized I'm pretty scarred by the pleasure. I'm pretty scarred by the desire. I don't understand what love looks like anymore. You know, it was nothing for him to come home with a corsage from my mother, nothing. Nothing for them to put on some Ray Charles and dance in the living room. I guess what I'm talking about is romance. And for me, growing up, everyone, not just my parents, it wasn't some special thing. Romance was like air, you know, and it was really beautiful. And the lyrics of the songs and the incredible compositions of the music, they reeked with desire, reeked with it. You know, it was painful to hear the OJs, painful to hear the Spinners, you know, speaking Earth, Wind, and Fire, speaking unabashedly about love. And now, I mean, I really applaud you, John, on this issue, because love is an unfashionable word. And how did that ever happen? How did that ever happen? I'm speaking now politically and historically, like, what happened to our ability to be tender? I look at what's happening in the world right now politically. You know, we don't even stop every day to just honor the dead who have passed away. There's no tenderness. You know, it's fine. Blow the world up if you want, but at least do it with some tenderness, you know. So,
Yeah, the lack of space for public mourning is really, the cost of that is unimaginable. I don't think we even know what this experiment will lead to. But I do think it means that people are sort of desperate for love. You know, Matt, in Making Nice, one of the things that tears at the family in the book, as they grieve over a mother or a wife, is this feeling that the word of love is not enough. You know, when the various siblings go in and out of her hospital room, you know, they check in with each other and they say, what'd she say? And they said, oh yeah, a few random I love yous. And one of the things that's so beautiful about your stories is you find a way to describe love without using the word. You know, love is sort of fighting. You know, love is being, you know, kicked into a snow ditch. Love is being made fun of. Love is, you know, love is refusing to let go. And I guess I wondered if you could talk about that, either in the course of this book, which I think is just one of the most beautiful books about grief I've ever read, or in your own family, you know, because I know from the stories you tell that your family has a very, let's say, particular language when it comes to love.
Well, one, how could you make me follow Robin? How dare you? It was just a pleasure to hear you read, Robin, and that was fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I draw a lot from my experience, and use it as a springboard into my stories and my work, because it still kind of perplexes me. You know, when I think about love, like my love language is like, it's ball busting. Like my father called me shitbird and dipshit and fuck nuts, you know, like my whole life. And I never, growing up, I felt the love through that. You know, it was said with joy, but it's this very Long Island toxic masculinity masking true tenderness. You know, sort of this wall up. And you know, when I think about that, it's sort of what I try to do in my work, which is like, you know, underneath this facade of bluster and machismo and everything else is this real vulnerability, which is love, which is tenderness. And, you know, like I think often like of like, it wouldn't be uncommon for my father, like if we would get into an argument, you know, and I'd be like giving him the middle finger as I back out of the driveway. You know, he'll be like, fuck you, don't drink and drive. You know, it's that kind of love, right? And I'd be like, fuck you, see you later. So I don't know, that's sort of what I try to capture, is that dynamic, because that's what I grew up in. You know, it's pretty rich out here. We're pretty rich at that on Long Island. So I don't know. I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. The piece in the issue is actually an essay, and it's sort of in the spirit of the piece that you wrote for the California issue as well. As in, it's about a relationship that you have with another person, and you kind of use that relationship to reflect on, you know, a space that's created by, in some ways, an absence, you know, and in this case, it's sort of an absence of your family to some degree. And you write about basically taking care of a dog that is going to break your heart, that a dog that no one kind of wants. And I wonder if you can talk about that kind of love, you know, and because you're writing an essay, you ultimately have to inform a bit on yourself. You know, it's not about you, but you basically start to observe patterns. And I guess I want to ask why if you have any theory as to why you're drawn to these sorts of cases, the hard luck, no love cases.
I'm a sucker for grief time bombs. I can't stop trying to save the things that I love, and that I think it maybe started with dogs. It also in Making Nice, there's that one story about Gary the bird. I know I'm going to lose him eventually, but I can't help it. And I have friends who are constantly like, why do you do this to yourself? Like, why do you keep doing it? I don't know if I have an answer, except that on some level, I feel like my entire life is a salvage job that includes includes writing. Like, I'm trying to save something that I love or that I think is important. And so I keep adopting these dogs that are all fucked up with congenital issues and shit like that. And I'm like, I'm going to pour all my money into them because that seems like a good idea. And all my friends are like, you're an idiot. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but I'm going to keep doing it. Because every now and again you get lucky or you get this special joy. I can't say it's a smart thing to do. I just, that's what my heart tells me to do. So I do it.
Do you have the issue in front of you? Is there a way you could read like a little section of it?
I don't have the issue. I could read a little section from my phone. I never do that. I hate when I see writers do that, but I'll do it. I'll do it for you. I just got to pull it up. I'll read a little.
It looks like Tommy Orange has arrived. He's vanquished the rattlesnake.
I will read. I'll just start from the beginning. It's a story called Green Reverse. Twice a week, I play Uno with a gay Egyptian psychiatrist who inevitably, without fail, calls me a rat-faced piece of cheating garbage in need of hospitalization before he offers to murder my dog. Just leave me a key, he says. See a movie, he says. I'll take care of it. I consider my options and hit him with everything I've got. Slow-like, deliberate-like, fuck you-like a yellow 3. And then I look him dead in his very kind eyes and say something a hate crimer might say, or a rat-faced piece of cheating garbage in need of hospitalization might say. And then I say, you can't kill Seymour. He's a good boy. Is he, though, he says, and plays a yellow 7. Is he really? Oh, I go and blink like a stunned idiot with no arms and dirt in his eyes. This little dance again? I'm sorry, miss, he says, and 2 finger folds his ear at me. What's that? I know what you're doing, I say. What am I doing? He says. Psyops, bro. You're doing mind games. Am I? He says, in exactly the way that lets me know he is totally doing that. He's asking me leading questions so that I will connect some dots in my brain and realize that Seymour is not only not a good boy, but is in fact an objectively terrible boy with one eye and no joy who wakes me up at 5 a.m. every morning by shitting in my kitchen and barking at it. I throw down a green 7 and go, yeah, you are. What are you going to ask next? Why there's blood in his stool, knowing full well it's because he has a polyp half an inch up his colon that the specialist texted me a photo of? Then I hold up my phone and show him my wallpaper. He shakes his head and draw twos me and gestures to the pile of cards like it's a cupcake he made and is proud of. But the only thing he actually half bakes are bullshit theories like that I rescued Seymour because I'm trying to save my father. And while I will acknowledge some similarities, my dad is meaner and has one leg instead of one eye and a touch more continence. Psh, I go. Pff. Then I pick up 6s, a red and a blue, and demand to know what lazy, fat-fingered amateur shuffled the deck. You did, he says. Oh, I say, and grimace my way through the quiet. Eventually he plays a green 9, and I get the same idea I get every time he plays a 9, which is that maybe I can get away with playing a 6. And then I think maybe I shouldn't do it, but then I go ahead and do it. I play the red 6 on his green 9 and hope he doesn't notice, but he does, because I try the same thing every game, and he always notices. Then he says I'm disgusting. Then he says I should be ashamed. Then he says he is grossed out by me. Honest mistake, I say, and pick up the 5-card cheater penalty and thumb point at Seymour on the couch, looking like a gargoyle fucked a fruit bat with ulcerative colitis. Let me guess. Next, you're going to ask if he ever ruined a party by shitting on a lady. Not at all, he says. He did. He diarrheaed on Maggie Mull, and I wet wiped her legs, sensually. Let's talk about your medication, he says. Oh, here we fucking go, I say, and lean back in my chair. Why? So you can segue into talking about Seymour's? Because we have nothing to hide. Flagyl and Apoquel, phenobarbital and CBD, special eye drops for his eyeball, prescription low-fat dog food, or else he gets pancreatitis and goes fugue and stares at the wall for a few days. And I mix canned pumpkin in there because it's good for his shits. Sounds expensive, he says, and runs a finger across his neck. You fuck, I say. You're probably planning to ask how his seizures are and why his dick is yellow, even though you already know the answers are real bad, and because he likes to dip it in the pee puddle before he moves on. I want to know if he ate a battery, I say. Yeah, 9-volt. If you're taking your medication, he says. How dare you, I say. The nerve, I say. Here's the thing, I say, and tap my finger on the table a whole bunch. No. Then I avoid eye contact by staring into the ashes in the ashtray for a while. And when I finally glance up, he has his cards face down and his hands steepled, and he's giving me this look, like he's sympathetically judging me so that I question my own choices. But I don't. Instead, I look at him like he's a spoon I'm trying to bend with my mind, by which I mean that I know that he knows I'm not taking my meds anymore because I can't afford them, because American medicine leverages your pain for your money, and I spend all mine on fucked up dogs that keep dying on me, but I'm going to keep doing that. I'll just stop there.
Thank you so much, Matt. That was really, really, really wonderful. Tommy, you survived the rattlesnake attack, and I hope your family has too. Really good to see you. He's just arriving, so I'll tell you, in case you are not, you've been living under a rock, Tommy Orange was born and raised in Oakland, California. He's an enrolled member of the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes of Oklahoma. And his first novel, There, was published by Alfred A. Knopf in 2018. And the rights to it were sold in 27 countries. He's at work on a new novel called Wandering Star, while There is an adaptation for an HBO TV series. Tommy, nice to have you here.
Hey, good to be here. I've actually been here since like 5:08, I think. Sorry about that. I didn't bring my phone and didn't expect to come across a rattlesnake. It's the first time I've been that close to one. My dog almost touched it with his nose, and I saw there was about 12, what are they called, beads, maybe like a 12-year-old rattlesnake. It was really big, and I didn't realize that they sound like a sprinkler when they go off. And it was a pretty narrow path, so we had to like keep throwing rocks and wait for it to retreat. So it just took kind of a long time.
See, that's the language of love and snakes. Since you've been here, you know, one of the things we are sort of kind of tacking around and towards and through is just the inheritance of love, and how that is a kind of linguistic and gestural DNA that we all receive from the areas that we grow up in, including family, including place, and including, to some degree, culture. And since your piece is a kind of prose poem of sorts, and it is about sort of, it's set in China, and it's about, to some degree, learning to love your family in the language that they need to receive love in. And that's different to some degree than obviously the way that love was given to you. And I guess I want to start by asking you the way that you understood love growing up, just as a person. You know, one of the most recent beautiful pieces I read by you was about basketball, about shooting hoops in the dark, you know, or almost in the near dark with your dad. And I guess, was that clear to you that that was love?
Yeah, I mean, I think love and hurting each other always feels so close to me, and sort of knowing that there's love when there's hurt, because I don't know, building up a kind of defense system around other people and not letting other people hurt you, but you sort of can't help but let family hurt you. And I think, you know, in terms of what I saw love to be was like my parents fighting all the time, or like these grand actions of like my dad laying down the basketball court, all this concrete in our backyard, and he still credits it for ruining his knees, which, you know, he can barely walk these days, and he likes to credit that particular thing for why he can't walk anymore is because, you know, so it's all tied up with pain and love. It was like a devotional thing that he did, all these bags of concrete down with the wheelbarrow, and he's an engineer, and like, you know, he was very methodical about it. I didn't see it as love at the time, or I didn't know that I did. And there's so many actions that I've came to know were love, and then becoming a parent and knowing what it takes to sacrifice for a kid. Also knowing that it comes from a wellspring that feels endless, because having a kid kind of changes how you think of love. At least it did for me. I think I rambled a little bit there. Sorry.
Not at all. I mean, I wonder if you could just expand a bit on that, and, you know, because that's where the linkage happens, you know, when you have a child and you then have to sort of not just give love, but demonstrate it and explain it. And you must be aware at some point of the old love inside you that's working on Magnavox technology, and then you have to give the sort of the digital love out. And I'm using that metaphorically, but I think you get what I'm saying.
I think you got muted. I'm not sure.
Oh, no, I muted myself towards the end of the question,
Oh.
but I guess what I'm just saying is, you know, can you talk more about that, about being a parent and sort of translating what was inside you as love to them, to your kids?
Sure, yeah. I was just playing video games with my son this afternoon on the floor of my office as a game called Bomb Squad. And video games were not something that my parents, my dad specifically, did not really engage. And I kind of grew up with them, but it's a game where you're just trying to blow each other up with bombs, and they're little claymation figures. But it's something that he has come to love, and us doing it together. You know, we're laughing the whole time, and it's time we're spending together. And it's this thing that I never understood love in video games, like through that parental relationship. It was just like something that I was into and did by myself or with friends. But to translate that as something that I guess I'm well-versed enough in the language of video games, or I'm fluent in, you know, the hand-eye coordination piece of it, to the point that I'm competitive with him, and we can laugh and compete. And that's been a kind of a crazy thing that we've had between us. I mean, not the only thing that we do, but it's something that I just thought of in terms of what you're talking about, Magnavox love. And it just happened, you know, not just hours ago before our encounter with the rattlesnake. We were playing on the floor of my office. And there's so much love that, you know, sometimes the word is kind of ruined, or it feels like it doesn't apply to the world anymore, as Robin was saying, just with everything going on and a lot of heartlessness out there. There's so many ways that it's expressed without the word, and there's so many ways that it hurts, that are actions too. And that's what I was talking about earlier around thinking about love and being hurt. And, you know, this thing that I wrote it in Guangzhou. I was on a tour bus with my wife's family. Her dad grew up in Hong Kong, and we were going back to see where his parents grew up. So it was kind of this journey back to, you know, he'd been away from Hong Kong since he was 18, and, you know, spent a lot of time in America. And we stopped to go to the bathroom on this tour bus, and the thing just came out. And it, you know, it's related to having my wife's family as, you know, my new family, my family through her, and learning what that means So all these different types of love and you know, I don't know where I didn't set out to write anything. I was just on the bus and this thing came out. So I'm just setting some context for where I wrote it.
Do you have it handy?
I do.
Love to have you read it if you're up for it.
Sure. Guangzhou. The hooks and the nexus of my solar plexus rhyme with what remains when I remove them. All my loved ones who love me wrong float like comic ghost tales in my periphery. I don't look like them, and don't look at them directly like I don't look at the sun, but see its loose rays. I love my loved ones wrong too. Then like comic genie third wishes, I wish for more wishes and for more of everything, and am never fed. Hunger is not the word I would use for what I am, though I eat to it. The bridge over which we span is not as connective as we believe it to be. It is so wide as to not be a bridge at all. The expanse does not connect but makes vague our relation. There can be no water under a bridge that is not a bridge, which means we will never forgive each other for not ever being enough. Split pea soup soul that I have, no ham hock, no meat or bone soaked flavor, but green blandness. I used to have taste, but became too new again. This is all to say that I'm lost, but only now know that I am. This is all to say we are unmade and supposed to be. I fold like cardboard on a daily basis, break silent, soft underfoot of people who don't know me, who are supposed to know me most. Best? It's because I've always been hiding and show like I'm open, like I'm willing to be vulnerable, open, and honest. These are lies. Almost everything can be. I am vulnerable, open, but for reasons they can't see. I am dying. You are too. But I'll never become a ghost because I've always been one. Something is going from me. I've begun to early mourn. Is it more years that I won't have because of the way I lived my life? Do I deserve them? Want them? It's not that. I've known they would leave me for some time now, leaning it back against the wall of my mind, posture like I don't give a shit because I do so much give a shit. I know not to show that I do because of what people do with that. When you tell them you love them, when you give them what they want, it's exactly what they want. They want more. I'll give it all away. I never wanted to keep it. I'll put their hooks back in my sides. I'll drag them if I have to. Where? To Guangzhou, or to wherever we're all going, wherever all of what this has always been going. I'm going to.
I'm going to read a tiny quote from your book there, Tommy, from the chapter called Edwin Black, where Ed is talking, he's having an argument with his mother, and she says to him, just relax. Treat me like I'm your mother, like I care about you, like I love you. Treat me like I went through 26 hours of labor for you. 26 hours and then a cesarean to top it off. They had to slice me open, Ed. You didn't want to come out. You were 2 weeks late. Did I ever tell you that? You want to talk about feeling full. And I bring that up now because what you just read circles and touches on people saying what they want. And I just wanted to bring this up as I cycle into one last question from Robin and Matt, and then you again, Tommy. You know, Robin, in one of your poems, Glenda the Good, you have this beautiful line, pray the stars are all the feelings we refuse to love, and somehow they have forgiven us. And I feel like forgiveness has come up in what we're talking about, that if we can accept that love is going to be this sort of slightly broken syntax, between generations, between lovers, forgiveness has to be there too. And one of the things I love about that section of your book is it suggests forgiveness of the self is an important part. And I wonder if you can talk about that in terms of love. You've talked about sort of black joy and but where does this kind of forgiveness enter the picture as a definition of love for you?
I just want to back up. I get moved when I read what other writers that I admire. You guys, thank you. This is incredible. I'm really honored to be a part of it. John, back up a minute. That poem, so first of all, that poem, Gunnhild the Good, is an homage to Lena Horne and her role in The Wiz as this kind of sapphirific figure. And actually the whole line, I think, will answer your question. It says, pray the stars were all the feelings we refuse to love, and somehow they have forgiven us. Can you quote me back to myself? Something like that we do not call them by their animal names or something like that, right, John? Somehow they have forgiven us that we do not call them by their animal names. I think that's what it is. And I think what I was, besides, yes, it's about forgiving the self, but it's about forgiving this. It's more about the self, asking us to forgive our own limitations, right? That why is it, like the piece that Tommy just read was so beautiful. Thank you, Tommy. I can't believe you wrote that on the bus in China. It's so perfect that, I was wondering, did it take all those years and all that life and all that love and all that loss and all that vulnerability to be loved and to love, and there you are on a bus in China with your wife's family, to then be able to write that? That's what I was thinking with, because there's so much. It feels like the silence that is under that piece, and that piece is profoundly powerful, is as palpable as the words. And so, we are really good at repressing ourselves. We are really good at it. That's what Hannah Arendt talked about, what neo-totalitarianism is, where, what do you need the police for when you have a police inside of you at all times telling you what's acceptable and what isn't? And so that poem is about, trying to encourage everyone, myself most of all, to just let my feelings have their strut through my psyche, whatever it is. I don't have to do anything about it, and I think about that, so I know this all sounds very like new agey and shit, but really, it's about fighting totalitarianism, right? It's about fighting colonialism. It's about, trying to engage a post-colonial mind where, when I talk to people and I tell them the kinds of things that were not acceptable in my childhood, right, as a woman and as a Black woman, people just can't imagine it. You don't wear red. We couldn't wear red. It was prohibited, right? Just, there's a whole list of things that people just can't imagine. And all of this is about policing desire, right? And policing pleasure, right? So yeah, it's really important to forgive ourselves for the feelings that we have, and that we don't, more importantly, not just to forgive ourselves for the feelings that we have, but that we don't honor them, whatever they may be. As ugly as, even the ugly ones. That's what I love, Matt, about your piece about the dogs. Like, I feel like I'm the dog, right? Aren't we all those broken, diseased dogs? It's not just, it's really easy to jump Freudian. I love Freud. I know it's unfashionable, but I think he was smart. Crazy, but smart, right? So of course that dog's your father, or the narrator's father, but it's also yourself and your mother and your friend. I mean, that's one of the things I loved about studying. Oh, good. So I'm going to read a little Sanskrit poem. That's one of the things I loved about studying Sanskrit epic, right? It's just known that every character is you, not just one, not just the one with which you most identify, narcissist. That's not the point. The character you least identify with is probably the one that is most you, right? In Sanskrit epic. And I think about that when I read novels too. And so when you were reading, Matt, I was like, yeah, that dog, I recognize that dog. It has my face on it, right? And that tenderness, that vulnerability, we think we're talking about love and unicorns and rainbows. It's like, yeah, you try to love. Like for me, the poem I read today is a poem that's fun, right? But make no mistake, you know, the pleasure was far few and in between, because love was hard. It was always understood. Like when my father said, we're Catholic, we don't get divorced, what he was saying is, this is hard business. Love is hard business. And don't for a moment think that it's a toy, right? And thank God that in between we can fuck for a hi-fi and listen to good music and have fantastic jazz and go for walks and eat good food and all those things, because what's happening, you know, the majority of the time, the air is tenuous, right? History is with everything that's happening, is pressure that is unbearable. So that if you can find someone for a moment to touch lips to and actually mean it, that's a profoundly political act. So yeah, there's a lot in that poem for me about Lena Horne, because I just want to say to those people, here I go again, the old lady, for those people who don't know who Lena Horne is, please research her. One of the things I love about her career is that here she was, this beauty, right? And the reason why her success was so prominent was because she was light skinned, which we don't want to talk about, right? If Lena Horne were dark skinned, she would not have had the career she had had. And she knew that. And she was very political about it. And I remember once she was giving a concert, and they made the price of the ticket at the time was $25, which was exorbitant. And she said, basically, how dare you lower the price? My people can't come and see me if you have the price that high, right? And to me, this is a part of that conversation. And it's why I wrote a poem to her too. You know, like, we need to have this pleasure and we need to make it accessible.
Yeah, Robin, as you were speaking, last night I watched the Pete Souza documentary about his years of photographing the first family. And he first did this for the Reagans, and then did it for 8 years with the Obamas. And I could not contain emotion when I was seeing pictures of the president kissing his wife with love, holding his children with love, just in the gentle way that you hold the back of a child's head, you know, or easily put your arm around them. And it was surreal to see a president expressing love or showing it tenderly, and not sort of his posture entering a room with the expectation of adulation, which is so different, you know. And I can't think, you know, what life would be like without, you know, this constant sucking up of oxygen in the way of demonstrating fame and adulation versus love.
Yes.
You know? And that's why I think poetry right now is so I mean, has so much life in it. Is we need that swerve toward tenderness.
Yes. Might I just interject something too about that? And it's also in response to what Tommy was saying about parenting. I am a mother. I have a 12-year-old. You know, like every other parent, I struggle to do a good job. But one of the things that I didn't know I was doing until quite recently was smothering my son with kisses at all times. Any chance I could kiss him, I'm kissing him, right? And that's the way we grew up. We were always, all of our relatives, we're just a kissing family. We kiss a lot. And, you know, as parents do, we stay up in the middle of the night wondering if our kid is okay, if we're doing an okay job. We take our inventory. What did we do during the day that wasn't cool? All those things. And recently my son came in and he started cooing with me. And he was cooing in a way that my mother used to coo with me, that I didn't know I had transferred to him somewhere unconsciously, right? And I thought, he'll be okay. He will be able to love someone well and show his affection well. Like, maybe he'll be okay. Do you know what I mean? Like, just the ability to be vulnerable and show love and touch and adoration. Adoration, you know, it takes a lot of bravery to adore something. It takes a lot of bravery, especially in this day and age, to adore something. You know, and it's just so easy to think that we're talking about minor feelings when I don't think there's anything more major, you know, than being able to stand near someone and let them stand near you. You know, it's really easy. I have a lot of friends who are activists, And I'm always like, dude, you can't, but you can't let anybody near you. That's all fine and good. Save the world, but you can't save your family. You can't save yourself. You can't save your kid. You can't even save the fucking postman. Like, what are you doing? That's what I appreciate, Matt, about the dog in your piece. Like, love is hard. It's hard. It's hard, but I don't think there's any other way through. And Tommy, that's why I thought the piece that you read was so powerful too, both of you.
Tommy, I want to ask you, we began, after Robin read her poem, we sort of touched glancingly on romance. And I was so glad you used that word, Robin, because romance is different than desire.
Yes.
You know, and I do feel like romance is a bendable concept of love.
Mm.
You know, it's that you can look at the world with romance, and you can look at a person that you've already committed your life to with romance. You know, that romance can kind of come in and out of the marriage, and moments when you need it. And you know, Tommy, you've been working on this novel, but you're writing and you're exchanging poems with a poet, and you've been working more in poetry-like forms. And I wonder if you could talk about poetry as a form that taught you something about romance, if it did at all, and if so, you know, where it came from, like which poets and what they told you.
Well, thank you, Robin, for your kind words and for bringing so many ideas that are happening here together so eloquently. I feel really like I'm underqualified to talk about anything related to poetry. I'm really late to.
You're gonna say love.
I'm really late to really going at poetry. Everyone's frozen, but I'm not sure if I am. Am I? I think that was just my connection, maybe. Am I frozen? Okay.
No, we can hear you.
Yeah, so I've been exchanging since last spring, just exchanging a lot of very fresh work with the poet Kaveh Akbar, who's an amazing poet. I've been really hesitant to want to love poetry because it's not what I fell in love to literature to. It was always fiction. And I thought poetry was trying to leave me in the dark on purpose, and I felt resentful for many years for it. And I realized just, you know, in the past few years that the retaining of mystery is what it does so well. Poetry's ability to retain its mystery, to reveal its power and retain its mystery at the same time, is a really incredible thing to experience. And once I realized that, and I didn't need to find the secret, or didn't need it to tell me, then, you know, I've really gone at it. But it in terms of romance, I feel maybe similarly, like with my wife and the way romance happens, I feel very much like I don't ever want to talk about it. Like even to her, like I want to do things when it feels like that's called for or comes up organically. But I feel like any talking about romance, like immediately ruins it for me. Like it turns it into something like I believe in doing romantic things, and I love when it's there and it happens, but I feel like immediately it's ruined in my head as soon as I start talking about it. Or if she says something nice, that I did something nice or romantic, I'm like, stop talking about it. I just want to. So poetry and romance have never gone together for me, although I did write a lot of questionable poetry to her when we were first dating. But in terms of like formative years of reading, that's not something that really went together for me.
Matt, I want to ask you a question and then ask Robin to leave us with a Sanskrit poem. You know, Peter mentioned the word community, and I feel like love is you know, community is love enacted in space. You know, and having spent time with dogs, usually someone else's dogs, which I fall in love with and then have to give up, I'm aware that as soon as you have one with you, you enter a different community, and it's the community of people with dogs. or as well as the community of people who love dogs. And I wonder, taking Seymour out, I know Seymour is no longer with us, but can you describe, if you can, without, you know, reaching anyone's privacy, like what is the community of the people who love fucked up dogs? What is that like?
One, Obama had a dog, unlike the current occupant. What is the community like? I don't know if I can speak to that. It's diverse, but I will say, as like someone who I live in Hollywood, on Sunset and Gardner. Where I live is fucking weird. Sunset and Gardner, above a horn shop, like musical horns, across the street from a school, and a fire station. It's real loud over there. But right up the road is this place called Waddles. It's like this Waddle. It's like someone donated their house, and now it's a park in LA, and it's become an unofficial dog park. And in fact, they actually show up there maybe 3 times a year and write people tickets for having their dogs off leash. But I will say it is like there's a community there of dog lovers that have become very kind of important to me in LA. You know, obviously being in a city, while you're surrounded by a lot, it could also be tremendously lonely. So I would go up there twice a day with these fucked up dogs of mine, and my dogs became characters too, and they had their own pack at the park, and then you become familiar with the dog. Tink, with not Seymour, the other dog. Well, Seymour too. They're just recognizable dogs. One dog had one eye. I had to, when he went to the bathroom, I had to wipe him because there was blood. Nightmare stuff. He would pee and then dip his dick in the puddle. Tink had a cleft face and like where there was like teeth in her nose. She looked like a sea lamprey. But she was beloved by so many people. People would see her and feel joy. So through them, I got to know a bunch of people who have become very dear to me. Really tremendous friends who have become really important in my life through our mutual love of dogs and rescuing dogs and all of that. Also, I've made some enemies because I always do. But I don't know if that answers your question, but it's through a shared through shared suffering, solidarity comes solidarity, and shared love also solidarity. You become connected.
Robin, do you think you could read one of your favorite poems to sort of bring us home?
I'd love to, and it's so great that it's a Sanskrit poem. It's perfect because I know I could also kind of come out of one of my many closets. So in another life, about a couple of decades ago, I used to be a Sanskritist, and one of my attractions to Sanskrit poetry is the idea. It's very tantric, and I mean classically tantric, not like what you guys do at the yoga studio. Is the idea that the beloved, anybody that comes into your circumference, Matt, a dog, for example. I was just reading the Mahabharata. I've been reading the Mahabharata a lot lately, and right before Yudhishthira gets to ascend and go into other realms, he's been with this dog for decades, and he gets tested by this voice that says, well, yes, you finally made it. Yudhishthira is the son of Dharma. You finally made it, but you got to let go of the dog. Like, come on, you can't come in heaven with a dog. And Yudhishthira's like, well, then fuck you, because this dog has been with me through the Himalayas for right? And then the voice from heaven is like, no, you're the son of Dharma. You cannot come in. And Yudhishthira is like, well, bye. I'm not coming in. And it is an amazing moment, right? You think about this, there's 3rd century BCE to 3rd century CE texts where you would expect, right? There's so many things that happen in this epic where it just messes with all your Orientalism because it just refuses to satisfy our projections, right? So you would expect the son of Dharma would be like, well, of course I let the dog go. The dog is polluted. It's a polluted animal, right? Blah, blah, blah. So yes. And then as he's walking away with the dog to be like, fuck you, heaven, the voice goes, my son, turn around. I'm so well pleased with you. That dog is right? He's been with you this whole way. Make sure that you got here safely. And this was also a test because that is absolutely the right answer. You don't want to go to heaven. You want to go with your stray dog always because that's the compassion. That's the love. That's the painful thing. Okay. So Tantra always believes that whoever is in that circumference, usually in this case in the poem I'm going to read and what people think about Tantra is a lover, but it also means anyone, right? That living thing, that adamant thing is the beloved. It is, for lack of a better word, God, but this is the best part, manifested in your life just for you. Just for you. It's a personal manifestation of God, kind of like the way people talk about Jesus, but really it's a personal manifestation just for you. And therefore, you have to treat that fill in the blank, dog, lover, parent, rock, I don't know, with incredible devotion. Incredible devotion. And if you do, you don't need religion, you don't need anything. You will then blah, 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 right? Attain some blah, blah. Okay, so this is the tradition upon which this poem was written. And I just wanted to see, it doesn't say what century this is, but by the looks of it, it's probably something like 8th or 9th century. And it's by a Sanskritic poet named Valana. I praise the consecration of the God of love, which wins the victory from the best of other rites. No priest need be invited. The sacred image is one's mistress. The acts of worship, looks, embraces, kisses, and the gift, oneself.
So nice. It's so nice to hear the word devotion used on many different levels, you know. I think at this point, if anyone in the audience has a question for Tommy or for Robin or for Matt, I guess you could put it in the chat. And we could ask it of them. You've been really, really kind to, for those of you dialing in from other coasts, to either suspend your dinner or have it early. And for those of you on the West Coast, I envy you that it is still not even time for cocktails yet, that you are probably all going to go off and do something outside in a 90-degree weather. Peter, it was really, really lovely of you to host this at City Lights, and Jack and Hunter, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much for doing this. Yeah, thank you, Matt and Robin and Tommy and John, and thank you, Peter, at City Lights. We really appreciate it. It was really nice to hear all of your words. They were fantastic.
John, can I just interject? I just wanted to say thank you to you, John. You're like, I don't know if people realize like how extraordinary you are and all that you do, both in terms of your own extraordinary writing, which you're so humble and don't talk about enough. Incredible writer, I'm such a fan. And then all of the editorial work that you do in the world and what you've done. You know, there's a whole like behind the scenes world of people like Sunny Mehta, God rest his soul, and, you know, editors, just incredible, brilliant people who really changed the world really quietly by the literature they put forth into the world. And you're definitely one of them. And I'm always honored to be anywhere around you.
Oh,
so, you too.
I miss you. I miss all of you guys. You know, it seems a long, long time ago, Robin, that you and I were driving across LA talking about architecture.
You do.
We've got some questions here from the audience. Monica asks, is there a way to write about love or a type of love without ever having experienced it? Which is a great question for writing. I mean, as in, how do you generally approach writing about the things you don't yet know but imagine might be real?
I'm happy to jump in until someone else does.
Robin?
I mean, I feel like I write about a lot of things that I don't know, and that writing about it is how I get there. Like, you come to know it through the writing. One of the things John said about my book, which, you know, he always makes me feel seen, is that the poems were written over, they were considered so a long time. So there's a sonnet in my book that took me 3 years to write, you know, like I learned something through the writing of it, right? So I don't necessarily wait till I experience something to write about it. That is not to say I jump around like in different performances or identities. That's not my thing. But I do think one of the ways I come to know some things that of which I am wholly ignorant is to try to write about it.
What about you, Summell? Do you ever find yourself writing into emotions you have yet to have, but find yourself imagining them?
I mean, like Robin, I learned through the writing. I learned what I'm thinking about something through the process of actually putting it on the page and sort of meandering through. I do think I could do a better job of, like, I don't consider myself someone with a fantastic imagination in any, by any stretch. I definitely lift heavily from my experience and from my life, and then fictionalize from there. So, but through that process, and just through the process of writing, I absolutely learn things about how I feel about something. For example, John, you've asked me for two of the Freemans, or actually I volunteered and probably begged you to put me in those issues. But you've given me the prompts. I know with the other issue about California, you were like, it was during, your and Nicole's like Christmas party or end of year party or something like that, where I got myself, a little drunk and started telling a bunch of stories. And then I fell asleep on your couch and woke up there the next morning to you in a little robe or something saying, hey, why don't you write about that homeless guy you were telling me about last night? And I was like, which one? And you explained it to me and you were like, write about that. And so through that prompt and through you pushing me to do it, then I took on that endeavor and learned a whole lot about how I felt about this man who had lived across the street, which I probably wouldn't have gotten so deeply involved with if it wasn't for the writing.
I think in general, people sometimes they know a lot more than they say or write. And sometimes I feel like the job of an editor is to tell people what they already know, or give them an excuse to sort of write that. And I know with an essay, it's a little easier because some people are natural and narrative storytellers. If you ask them how they feel, they tell you a story. They don't give you a word. And with poetry, it's quite interesting because there are some poets who can do extremely well with occasional poetry, where they're asked to write to an occasion, to a feeling. And what's really lovely about working with poets is that they're all kinds. They're the secret hoarders, like Robin Coste Lewis, who has about 7 manuscripts on the go. So I did not realize this until I heard you read in Paris, Robin, and I thought, wait a second, that was definitely not from Voyage of the Sable Venus. And I was like, where the hell did that come from? And then I asked you about it, and you're like, oh, someone's already publishing that. And then I mentioned a theme, and then badgered you, and then suddenly you sent me, I'm not kidding, the single best poetry submission I've ever received. And I've received, poems from, Adrian Rich and Wisla Szymborska and, the pretty fucking good poets. And I opened this and I thought, why is she sitting on this stuff? you know, and so I think there's the other kind of writer that sort of writes their feelings in the dark and then just sort of closes the book and puts it away. And it's
that's me.
Yes.
You know, I think it's because I'm a diarist. You know, I think that's a part of it, is that I'm a diarist, and so, you know, the writing, it's, you know, this is a crass analogy, but once I was with my ex-wife, God rest her soul, and we were somewhere, and this woman was putting on lipstick, and she was a very gorgeous woman. And I go, but why is she putting her lipstick on in public? See, that's what I mean about being indoctrinated from a certain age, right? And my ex-wife was like, darling, she just wants to look pretty for everybody. I said, I don't wear lipstick for anybody else. And we just started laughing hysterically. And she's like, well, why do you wear lipstick, honey? I said, for myself. It makes me feel good, right? It's good for me. I feel like about that I write them because they make me feel good, and then I put them away and I forget. I do. I don't know where, John, I don't know if you were here yet, and I was talking about there's so many poems and books now that I don't remember writing and that I should probably start pulling out. I know, John, thank you. But I also think there's something to be said. I also think there's something to be said for letting work sit for a while. It's amazing to go back and look at poems that I've written and go, okay, so this still stands up. It's still something I can keep my head up about writing. Like if I published it, like there's, you know, I don't want to be that person, and I'm different. I know that a lot of people don't feel this way. A lot of people have this other way of being that I'm trying to get to, where it's like, publish it now, and if it's shitty 10 years from now. That was where you were, who you were at that moment, and that's fantastic. Like, life is messy. It doesn't have to be, you know, perfect. Speaking of, that's my dog. I'm not proud of it. I do hold on to things too long.
Matt, you have this line in Making Nice about, in one of the stories, this character's considering writing a 3-napkin love letter.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
And I love that idea of sort of pre-ephemeralizing expressions of love, to sort of take the edge off the weight of them. And there's an anonymous attendee has a question: can intimate portrayals of love and love with those who are intimate be enough to fight fascism? Like, can a napkin kill fascism, I guess?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think you had asked a question, John. I don't know. I don't remember what the question was, but my answer was Pablo Neruda, right? You know, his 20 love songs and a song of despair, right? But Neruda was also an extraordinary political poet. You know, he was haunted after by many governments. You know, I just, you start reciting a love poem in the middle of a protest and see what happens, right? I mean, there is no other force stronger. Sure, justice, and I have been out in the streets all my life. Sure, justice will do, but you know what I have found is you read a love poem after you get through with your political poems, and everyone's heart opens. Everyone is present. Everyone softens, right? I got asked a question once. I forget, it was from some magazine. I don't remember what it was. Like, what kind of literature would give to a dictator, right? Or something like that. And I was like, I would find their softest weakness, right? And find the sexiest love poems. Because once you find the key to the lock of someone's like hatred and hardness, and you can open them up, you can go anywhere. And I do think that poetry can do that. I just do. You know, it can break down the hardest stone. It really can. If it's a good poem, if it's a good poem.
I find it interesting that a lot of the placards at the Women's March, but also many of the recent Black Lives Matter protests, you know, June Jordan, Audre Lorde, you know, more with the Women's March, Adrienne Rich, and all of those poets wrote amazing love poems too. Absolutely.
Muriel Rukeyser, right? She's that line of hers I see a lot now, thank God. You know, if one woman told the story of her life or told the truth about her life, the world would break open. It's an incredible statement, right? And then Rukeyser goes on to write some of the most devastating love poems ever written, right? Tsveteva, all of them, you know? I don't understand, for me, I don't know about you guys, but I don't understand the demarcation between love and politics. For me, they're the same thing. It's the same thing, right? Love is one of the most political engagements of all.
Yeah, we had a previous event that's going to run this week in a Vancouver Writers Festival with Daniel Mendelsohn, Velžina Mort, and Miyako Kawakami. And Velžina is Belarusian, and she was talking about how women protesting in Minsk right now against, tyrannical government and the lack of their agency as voters went out in the streets, obviously in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions. And what many people are describing is a feeling of love, that they've never felt so loved and so safe at the same time. And I think, that's a real possibility. One final thing. Jaime Cortez. Hi, Jaime. Jaime Blanco has a question. Matt, maybe you could take this. But as writers and observers, how do you express the magnitude of love when it comes in tiny presentations? So, in a short story, how do you get that kind of epic feeling of, how do you get the kind of Merchant Ivory love or whatever in a short story?
Gosh, that's a tough one for a guy, and I have to try to end on this. Okay. I mean, for me, it all comes down to the specific choice, concrete details. So, for example, sometimes I try to show it through the lack of it. I remember this one girl. It's in Making Nice. It's something like about this girl who says that when she was in grade school, that her parents never touched her, and that as a kid she wanted to be touched so badly she looked forward to the lice and scoliosis tests in grade school. And it's that kind of thing of like, okay, oof, that small thing touched me, hurt me. It was a lack of love. And so then you can try to, take that moment and exhaust it of all its emotion. How do you do that? And then you, and so I'm always looking for those moments to include. And if it's not that, then gosh, I don't know. Robin, help me out.
I don't need to help. I do not need to help you out. That was brilliant. That was brilliant. Thank you. I think the only thing I would add to that is I just keep coming back to, I just think, John, the questions you were asking Matt about the dog and the dogs are so poignant. Like, love what's around you, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Like, you can't be like fucking, I don't know. Just
my buddies, they're like trying to get golden retrievers.
Exactly.
Like, why don't you get a golden retriever? Why don't you get this? And I'm like,
right.
They don't need me.
Right. So for me, I'm about to get trolled, I'm sure, on Twitter, but for me, a golden retriever is about a performance of whiteness, right? At least there were no golden retrievers in the hood. That's what I have to say about that. Right. And I love golden retrievers. They're actually really great personalities because I code switch, and so I also code switch with dogs. They're really great dogs, but I'm just saying, right? I just love this whole stray dog thing, Matt, because, stray dogs are all around the world and they've been all around forever. I was reading this article because, John, I am finally finishing the book on the Arctic. That's what John is talking about. He's like, when were you writing this book about the Arctic? I'm finally finishing this book on the Arctic, hopefully by next summer. But in doing research about it and research about the Ice Age and evolution, did you guys know that I didn't know coyotes were as old as saber-toothed tigers? I did not know that. And they're saying that the reason why coyotes are still around and saber-tooths are not is that saber-tooths were prissy. And coyotes were like, we will eat anything. We will eat anything and we are still around, right? And I think about that in terms of like, you know, this whole dog thing and strays and how do we survive, you know? I don't know. I like to read existence into everything. And so that's just a, you know, it's a beautiful thing. So I think your dogs is that small love that the questioner is one way to answer that question too, from your own work. Like, can't be picky. Just give it all away. Give it all away. You know, I grew up with my sister and I laugh all the time. It was like, sometimes there'd be like so many people sleeping on our floors. You know, my parents were always like, oh, you know, one of your brothers brought a friend home from the service and he's going to stay with us for a while. I'll be like 3 years later, he's still sleeping on the couch. You know, like that's also a part of it. Like, so when I just think that love is too small a word for what we're talking about. It's been hijacked by capitalism and Hallmark and unicorns and Valentine's Day. It's like love is, there's nothing stronger, huger, vaster, longer, like hotter, deeper. There's nothing. It can encompass everything.
There's something in a book by my buddy Max Winter, his book X's, and one of the stories in that book ends with the line, I just want to be there for whatever needs me.
Yes.
And that resonates with me hugely when I think about dogs and when I think about love. And like, you know, if it needs me, I want to be there for it. And a golden retriever doesn't need me. So.
Yeah. I'm going to break in here because we've got 46 seconds. They've got an event coming up at 6:30. Robin Coste Lewis, this is her book. Matt Summell, this is his book. You can find new work from them here. You guys have been wonderful listening. Thank you so much, Peter at City Lights. Thank you, Hunter and Jack.
Thank you, City Lights. Thank Litquake. Thanks, John Freeman.
You've been wonderful.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, audience. Thanks, readers.
Thanks, everyone. We have another week of the festival, so please register for our events to come. Thank you guys again. Freeman's is always available at City Lights, so go buy it there if you're in the Bay Area. And if not, check out our bookshop. And thank you all. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, John.